back when I decided to go to graduate school, I wanted to do research for the rest of my life. The great part about this is that I can. So
Hmm.
it's the perfect blend between teaching students and also doing some research in the lab where I can also teach students how to do research.
All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another live edition of The Next Step. I'm Jeff Kozlowski. I'm a marketing strategist here at the School of Medicine and Dentistry at University of Rochester. Today, we have the pleasure of having Tara Vrooman on the podcast. She's a 2024 graduate of our Microbiology and Immunology PhD program. She just defended back in July, I believe. She'll correct me if I'm wrong here in a minute, but so she's fresh off thesis defense. If you have questions about that as well, throw those her way. But a couple months later, she moved out to Massachusetts and started a new job at Westfield State University. So we're here to talk about all of that. So there we go, Tara. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So, was I right? It was July that you defended?
Yes, July 30th. So I remembered yesterday, it was exactly 2 months from the day that I defended, and my whole life has changed since then.
It looks very different, doesn't it? Yeah, that's cool. So yeah, you defended in July and you moved, what was it, August or September?
Yeah, in August I moved. So I defended, and then I think it was 3 days later, I moved an entire house of things to Massachusetts.
That is, I know it was a wild summer for you. But so you are settling in. You're assistant professor of biology, is that right? At Westfield
Yes.
State. So how are you settling in? How are classes? How's the job?
Yeah, I'm settling in very well, getting to know the area in general. Every weekend, my husband and I make a point to go do something new because we're completely new to this area. I've never lived, more than an hour away from
Mm.
Rochester in my entire life, actually. And settling into classes really well. When I was looking for jobs and applying to jobs, I found this position and thought, this is my dream job. This is everything that I have ever wanted to do. I'm teaching the subjects that I love, and it's pretty much lived up to that as well. So now that I'm here, I'm really enjoying it. The students are all great, and I'm just having a lot of fun getting together lectures and activities for my students to do each week.
So which what classes are you teaching?
So I'm teaching, it's all microbiology based for this first semester. So I'm teaching a microbiology lecture for biology majors and a medical microbiology lecture for nursing students. And then I'm teaching two medical microbiology lab classes as well.
Okay. So let's get into, how you decided you wanted to teach. And I know I sent you questions ahead of time, but I might bounce around a little bit. So you did go to University of Rochester for undergrad, and you had all intentions of going to medical school, right?
Yes. So I started out thinking, I want to be a doctor. I love science. I love biology. I want to help people. And so everything was leading me towards going to medical school after undergrad. Um, and as a part of that, I guess I'll get into this part of the story now. Um, I knew I needed to get research experience because medical school is difficult to get into. You need research experience in order to apply to med school. And so I think it was my sophomore year of college that I ended up, by a stroke of luck, as part of the swing dance club at the University of Rochester. I was chosen to go perform a swing dance performance at the University of Rochester board meeting in Naples, Florida, spring break. And at that board meeting was Steve Dewhurst, who was at the time the chair of the Department of Microbiology and Immunology at the medical center. And I knew I had to introduce myself to him because he would know all of the people to get me research experience.
Yes.
And so I was brave and I introduced myself. and said I was really interested in doing research and asked if he knew of any openings. And he was very kind and told me to send him my CV and my grades, and he would try and help me. And so, maybe a week or two later, I got an email from Dr. Scott Gerber explaining what he did in his lab and asking me to come meet him. And from there on, I ended up doing research as a part of the summer scholars program that summer. And I decided right then and there I loved research so much. Forget about medical school. I want to do research for the rest of my life. And which of course that changed a little bit as I went on. But for the next 2 years of undergraduate, I did research in Scott Gerber's lab as his undergraduate researcher.
And then after undergraduate studies, then you stayed with Scott, right? And were you in the Gerber lab for your graduate studies as well?
Yes. So I applied to graduate schools because I decided, I loved research so much. I loved what I was doing in the Gerber lab. Scott was such a great mentor. And that's actually what brought me back to his lab. So I got
Yeah.
into graduate school at the Med Center. And after doing rotations, I decided that, I had already found the right fit for me. Perfect mentor, really interesting research with cancer immunology. And so that's what I stuck with for my graduate career.
That's amazing. And we'll talk more about that in a second. First, I do have to touch on swing dancing. Was that something you had done before coming to Rochester, or was that just like, "Oh, this seems fun. Let me join this club or this team"?
Yeah, actually, I'd always been interested in dancing and social dancing specifically, but never had many opportunities to do so before college. And
Okay.
so the swing dance club is something I joined my very first year at Rochester in college, and I kind of worked my way up and became president of the swing dance club by the end. So that goes to show how much I really loved swing dancing, and something I loved helped me find something else that I loved, so it
Exactly.
was great.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Look where it kinda led you. And I'm going to have to tag Steve Dewhurst in the comments, after this, so he knows we were talking about this. Because if he has pictures, Steve, we would love to see those, at some point. But so and I don't remember if we chatted about this in our introductory conversation. So you did the Summer Scholars Program as well?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yes, so, um, it was great. I didn't actually know it was a thing, but after meeting with Scott, he was trying to look up some different ways that I could potentially get paid for doing research over the summer, because again, I actually I grew up near Rochester, but I was still an hour away, and so Scott suggested that I apply for the Summer Scholars Program to get a stipend, and I ended up having to hold a res life job on campus as well to pay for my housing that summer. But through a mix of those two jobs, I was able to participate in research and get a small stipend to cover my research expenses and get some money as well while I was performing this research over the summer. And that was a really great experience as well because the summer scholars had different activities and professional growth activities. So we had a GRE prep class as part of that
Mhm.
program. And so that was very helpful. It gave me, a GRE practice book, which helped me prepare and do well on my GREs so that I could get into grad school 2 years after that. So I'm really grateful to the Summer Scholars Program for helping me that first summer.
So you mentioned that you thought at the time, like, I'm gonna do research the rest of my life. Like you said, clearly that changed and you took a different path. When did you sort of start thinking about teaching and as a possible career path?
Mhm. So I've always loved teaching. Even in high school, I would help my friends with their classes, and in college, I was a tutor for the Center of Excellence in Teaching and Learning, and that was really fun. It's something I've always enjoyed, but I never really thought of it as my future career until I started TAing for the
Mhm.
microbiology lab. So in graduate school in the microbiology and immunology program, at least, you have to TA in your second year. And I had so much fun TAing that first semester that I was then asked back to be a senior TA the next year. And so I had a little bit more responsibility and was in charge of my students. And that's really when I decided, I really love teaching. I want to look into more careers that are more teaching focused. And so um, I ended up taking that next spring a course. I'm trying to remember the exact name for it. It's something like leadership and
Yes.
management for scientists,
Yep, that's it.
with Eric Vaughn. And that was such a great class because it forced me to do informational interviews, which are really great and not scary, but they sound intimidating unless you're pushed into it. And so this gave me the opportunity to connect with some people that were in the career that I was interested in. So in the career that I'm in now. And I learned about their work-life balance and what they do each day and how much they're
Hmm.
helping their students. And more, I started to realize that that is exactly what I wanted to do. And I said back when I decided to go to graduate school, I wanted to do research for the rest of my life. The great part about this is that I can. So
Mhm.
it's the perfect blend between teaching students and also doing some research in the lab where I can also teach students how to do research. So research will get done a little bit more slowly than a typical research lab, but I also get to teach along with it. So it's a great combination.
Yeah, shout out Eric Vaughn, by the way, who seems to come up on every single one of these podcasts. So if you're a graduate trainee here and you have career questions or need some help there, just check out My Hub. They're a fantastic resource. Eric is our director of career services. So where was I going to go next with that? So you talked about some of the experience you got or being a TA kind of turned you on to the field. And you also, I got an adjunct position at St. John Fisher. Is that right?
Yes. So once I knew that I wanted to go into teaching, the one thing I was told by people in this position is that I needed more teaching experience.
Hmm.
And TAing is great to start, but if especially if you want to go right into teaching like I did out of graduate school, you're going to need some adjunct experience. So, a full class of just your own students where you're in charge, you don't have any TAs, you're just doing all of the main work. And so, thankfully, I was connected with Dr. Fernando Ontiveros at St. John Fisher, and I started adjuncting for their medical microbiology lab for nursing students. And I did that in the fall of my fourth and fifth years. And that helped me gain great experience, especially for the position that I'm in right now, because I'm doing the exact same thing. I am teaching nursing students medical microbiology. So that really helped me prepare for the career that I'm in now.
So, and I want to talk too about Scott Gerber and his sort of leadership and how he worked with you when you decided you wanted to go to teaching. And just a note on Scott, I haven't met him personally, but I have talked to several folks in his lab or that work with him. Just did a feature on Gary Hannon. I don't know if you know him,
Oh,
Tara, but
yeah, yeah.
we did a Q&A with Gary, who comes from Dublin, Ireland, and is working with Scott now. And again, this is a theme that comes up with Scott is his mentorship, and just how he cares so much about the trainees and their career paths. So can you just talk a little bit about, whether it was like how you approached your Dr. Gerber about wanting to go into teaching, and just, then you had an adjunct position your last couple years of graduate training. What did those conversations look like, and just kind of what was the relationship like there?
Mhm. So, yeah, I just wanna say again, Scott is just such a great mentor. He really cares about everyone in his lab and helping them to get to where they want to be in life. and no matter what that is and where they want to go. So, the common thing in academia is that everyone, all these PIs just want you to go into academia and that's it. And that's all they want to help you with. But Scott was so willing to help me get to where I wanted to go. So as soon as he heard I wanted to go into teaching, you know, I had to talk with him before I could even do the senior TA position
Mm,
because that wasn't required by the department and it took a good bit of time out of my days. So I had to check in with him and make sure he was okay with me spending that time. And then again, of course, with adjuncting, any grad student has to check with their PI and make sure they're okay with it because you are missing, at least a few hours during the day when you could be doing research. Um, so we just, made that decision together that I would put in some extra time in labs to make sure that I was making up for the adjuncting or we really tailored my graduate experience to what I wanted to do. So towards teaching. So I was able to have a little bit of extra time to fit teaching into my schedule and I'm really grateful that Scott was okay with that because again it helped me gain the experience that I needed in order to go right into this position. Um I think there was something else I was gonna say, but I can't quite remember now. But, just thinking about Scott and his mentoring style, I wanted to go into teaching, but if anyone wants to go into, a different career path, he is always looking up different ways and things that they might need and, "Oh, you should go to this conference," or, "You should talk to this person." He's always trying to help his students and postdocs, be the best they can be and get to that next step in their career goals.
I know that makes a huge difference in a graduate school experience, for sure. You mentioned one thing that attracted you to the teaching profession was the work life balance. So can you talk a little bit about, I know it's still kind of you're very fresh into the new job, but what is your schedule like as a professor? Do you kind of make your own schedule to some extent? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so currently with it being my first semester too, I'm pretty busy making all of the lectures. So in graduate school, I actually loved giving presentations. I know most people can't say that, but I always thought it was really fun. And I would work for weeks sometimes to get a presentation just right for, a 1 hour presentation. And now in this career, I'm making 6 50-minute presentations every week.
Mm.
So it's very different in terms of the amount of time that I have to spend on things. And I've been getting much more efficient at making my presentations. But so, because it's my first semester and I'm making everything fresh, I am spending quite a bit of time outside of the normal 9 to 5 working on these presentations. But again, I love it. I think it's really fun and I'm excited. Sometimes I'm creating fun activities for my students or trying to think of, fun ways to get the information to them. I try and be more interactive. And so I actually have these stuffed antibodies that I use.
That's
I
amazing.
bring them up in my classes as much as I possibly can.
How do you incorporate those?
So, um, with microbiology, I'm actually set to teach immunology next semester, which I'm very excited about. But with microbiology, there can be a lot of different tests, like ELISAs, that you might use. And so I use my little antibodies for the students to help them. Also, when explaining what an antigen is and how different bacteria can hide from the immune system, I always pull out my little antibodies. Um, but anyway, I'm getting off topic a little bit. Typically, I have an 8:15 lab this semester, so Tuesdays and Thursdays I'm in at 8:15. Wednesday, Monday, Wednesday, Fridays I'm in at 8:30 sometimes for my
Mhm.
9:20 class. But after that, I only have classes in the mornings, so I do have class every day of the week, but my schedule's pretty flexible after that, so I can do, any meetings that I have, any office hours for students, I can schedule that whenever works for me. Um, Especially when I hopefully stop being so busy making all of the lectures fresh. I'll
Yeah.
probably have a little bit more time to, you know, continue working on my classes, but my coworkers, it's very flexible. If they have to go pick up their kids or anything or drop off their kids in the morning, as long as their class schedule allows for it, it seems to be really easy to just make your own schedule as needed. So that's something that I love about this.
Does that antibody have a name?
It does not, but
Oh.
now I should name it. I actually so ELISAs are, a certain type of assay, and they actually require 2 antibodies,
Mm.
and my first year adjuncting, I complained to my husband about how I only had 1 to show the students, so, of course, at Christmas,
What
these
a
are the
great gift.
Christmas presents I
Yes.
get, things to help teach. But, maybe I'll have to have a homework assignment for my students to come up with a name for them now.
There we go, there we go. And following up a little bit on that topic, you talked about, spending so much time when you were an adjunct or just in presentations in general before on one 50-minute presentation. You've had to adjust a little bit now. You're kind of giving presentations multiple days a week, different presentations weekly. Um, what would you mentioned efficiency. Is that kind of been the key? Is just coming up with processes to be more efficient there, or is it more just like I'm good with good enough? It doesn't have to be perfect, or kind of what's been the sort of give and take there?
Yeah, definitely sometimes I have to just say, "This is good enough, the students will understand it. If they have questions, I can always answer them." And then I think the most freeing thing that I've realized is that I'm in charge. So I have this textbook that, the past professor has used, so I'm using this textbook, but it's my choice, what I choose to harp on from that textbook.
Hmm.
So at first, I was just trying to get everything that the chapter said and teach them every single thing. And then I realized, if I don't really care that they know this certain part of it, I can just cut that entire chunk out and save time for what I really
Hmm.
care about and what I really want them to know and think is important for them to learn. So that's been one way that I've cut down on the time that it takes to make these. And thankfully, because I'm teaching a microbiology lecture and a medical microbiology lecture, there's a lot of overlap actually, even though I'm using different textbooks. So I can kind of share some of the slides at least, which has helped a lot with timing as well.
And you mentioned a couple times this being the first year, everything is being developed for the first time for you. So
Yeah.
hopefully the idea is in the coming years and semesters, you'll be able to just kind of refresh and reuse a little bit.
Yes, yeah. I'm looking forward to that. Even next semester, I'm adding immunology, but I'm only teaching the medical microbiology lecture and lab, which I'm doing this semester. So hopefully I can just spend next semester making immunology slides and just thinking of ways to improve on my already made slides.
Yeah. The last thing I have, Tara, I just want you to help leave us with, a piece of advice, wisdom for some of our graduate trainees that, if it could be going the teaching route or if it's just kind of grad school in general. Any words of wisdom you can leave us with?
Yeah, so I would say enjoy your time in graduate school and try and really make the most of it. So, whether you know what you want to do in your future career, take the time and take the resources that you have available to you and really learn more about that, gain experience in that field if you can. And even if you don't know what career you want to go into in the future, there are a lot of great resources at URMC that you can take advantage of. You can do internships through MyHub at different, biotech companies, for example, and you can try adjunct teaching or you can do any number of things and you have a lot of people surrounding you that care about helping you in your future career. So just make the most of it while you're in graduate school. It's it's gonna fly by, even if it doesn't seem like it all the time.
Awesome. Thank you, Tara. And one last thing, if folks want to connect with you or if they have questions, um, where is the best place for them? Can they connect with you on LinkedIn or is that a good place to start?
Yeah, you could start at LinkedIn. I can also I don't know if I can get my email on here
We
somehow.
can share it later if you're cool with
Okay.
that for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah, I'm fine with sharing my email as well.
Okay, great. And we got one let's see. Life in Rochester. Manon wants to know life in Rochester for a master's microbiology student. Um, Sarah, do you want to just maybe hit on kind of life in Rochester in general and some of your favorite parts about living in the area? You grew up here, right? So I mean, or
Yeah,
at least
yeah,
not far. So you have all of the inside secrets.
yeah. Um, I would say just get out and do things. So Rochester has so many interesting festivals. There's the Greek festival, which is full of great food. There's the Jazz Festival every summer by Eastman, which is amazing. And there's all kinds of different delicious food. You can tell what I enjoy doing. And also getting out into nature. So I grew up near Rochester. About an hour away is Letchworth State Park, and I actually grew up 5 minutes from the park, so I'm a little bit partial, but that is an amazing, 17-mile long park with tons of trails and gorgeous waterfalls. So if you ever need to just step away from it all for a minute and just be in nature, that's an excellent place to start. And yeah, those are my favorite things about living in Rochester, I'd say.
Love it. And we did just get another question. This is a long one. It might cut off on here. So I will read it. Abdullah, given that I have extensive teaching experience from my undergrad studies and a strong passion for mentoring, which is central to my career goals, how can I effectively highlight this in my graduate school application while ensuring that I also convey my commitment to a career in research? I understand that graduate programs are looking for candidates focused on research, so I'm interested and how to balance these aspects in my applications. Tara, are you able
Mm.
to speak to that at all?
Um, yeah, that's a good question. So I would definitely focus on your research experience. Definitely have that highest on your CV when you're applying to graduate schools. But definitely include your teaching and mentoring experience because part of graduate school is mentoring. So you will likely have an undergraduate mentor or be mentoring the less senior graduate students when you're a senior graduate student. So that's definitely an important part to highlight in your CV as well and your application. Uh, One thing that I didn't talk about is that whether you're applying to something like a postdoc versus something like a teaching position after graduate school, you completely rearrange your CV. So for applying to graduate school, I would definitely put your research experience closer towards the top and have your mentoring experience underneath that. For a teaching position, I had my teaching experience right on the first page so that everyone could see it. And then I had my research experience as well, because again, that's an important part of this position too. So I would make sure to highlight each of those things, but for graduate school, maybe have a heavier research side that people see first.
I think that does it for us today. Tara, thank you so much for joining. Really appreciate the time.
Yeah, thank you for having me. And if
Absolutely.
anyone has any questions, you're welcome to email me.
Yes, and I'll put all relevant links and contact info in the comments afterwards. So thank you so much, Tara.